Hey guys, welcome to episode 10 of Understanding with Janti. Today I want to talk about being a victim. I decided to do this when at a recent Friday prayer, the Imam delivering the sermon called us all out. He asked us to think beyond ourselves. He asked us to stop being a victim. He asked us to be a benefit to those around us. And if I'm honest, it's something we all needed to hear. The Muslim community is guilty of being insular, of being tribal, of seeing itself as a victim. And, I'm not going to go into whether that's real or imagined, because definitely there are reasons why Muslims can and should feel that way. But that's what was great about this sermon. He was reframing everything for us. You may have a reason for being a victim, but there's another way to look at this situation. And, you know, after I came out of that, I realized that it's something we all need to hear as Americans. As we've become more tribal, as we've become more divided, we increasingly see ourselves as victims. All of us. Something we kind of relish, seeing ourselves as a victim. And after doing some thinking, I'm like, there are some really important lessons that we can all learn from being called out. So I just wanted to share those with you today. As I mentioned, the Muslim community can be insular. And I'm not innocent in all this. If you listen to episode 1, I shared my own experience post 9/11 and how I retreated into the Muslim community. And it was a normal thing. It happened to a lot of Muslims. It's also happened to a lot of, especially minority communities in this country, where in order to protect ourselves, in order to preserve our culture, people do tend to become a little bit more insular, a little bit more tribal. This is really exacerbated by the fact that many Muslims in this country immigrated here. They came from other countries. And so they don't really feel like they fully belong here. They chose this country, but at the same time, they don't fully feel American, right? They didn't grow up here. They don't understand the culture and language as well. So it's a very natural thing. And like what happened to me after 9/11, when the FBI started sending informants into our mosques, when individuals were being questioned, Muslims were being pulled aside at airports, when people were being arrested and prosecuted for crimes, that really definitely made things worse. But I have to say, there's a shared responsibility, because Muslims chose to come here. We raised our children here. We benefited from the freedoms. We benefited from the economic opportunities. So we're also a part of the society. And we have a duty to this country and its people, and that's sometimes forgotten. I saw this insular mentality even within the Muslim community. So years back, there was a fundraiser to help out the Syrians who were suffering because of the civil war. And this mosque, which was predominantly South Asian, they were raising this money. And in the middle, somebody gets up and says, why are we giving money to these people? Our own people have problems too, right? People from South Asia, India, Pakistan, they have problems. Why aren't we supporting them? Why aren't we sending the money to them? What I realized is, when we see ourselves as victims, we rationalize only looking out for ourselves, not thinking about the plight of others, not concerning ourselves with the plight of others. It rationalizes our self-centeredness. So this khatib, this man delivering the sermon, was reminding us of this larger point, of our obligation to the broader society, beyond our small ethnic and even faith tribe, our faith community. He was concerned about how the tariffs right now that are being discussed and implemented would harm the society, and disproportionately harm the most vulnerable. And he was calling on us to look out for them. Not just a duty as Americans, but a duty as people of faith. That while we may have connections to friends and family overseas, to people suffering in places like Syria, Yemen, Sudan, Iraq, Afghanistan, Somalia, Palestine, all these places. But our duty to help doesn't end with those who identify as Muslim. Our duty is to all of the most vulnerable, including and especially our fellow Americans. It was really a wake-up call for all of us, for the Muslim community, that we've been limiting our empathy. We've been becoming more tribal, and that's dangerous for a religious community, because a faith community should be led by values, not by identity, not by these tribal identities we have. Our empathy, our love, our compassion go beyond us, to them, to everyone, to all. So in the end, this sermon did a couple things. It called into question how we label ourselves as victims, and it demanded that we expand the definition of us. How could we see ourselves as victims when there were people far worse off than we were? And how could we ignore our religious duty to those in need? In the end, he was empowering us. He was reminding us of our power and our privilege. That lesson he taught us that day, it wasn't just relevant for Muslims. It was relevant to all Americans, because while we may call ourselves Americans, we live within sub-communities within America. We have identities that are also part of our American identity. Some of us are white, some black, some Hispanic. Some of us are religious, some are secular, some are liberal, some are conservative. There are all these identities that we have that while uniting under the American identity, we are also divided. And because of all this political rhetoric that's going on right now, we are noticing those differences more and more. We're feeling those differences more and more. We're having conversations within these groups more and more. And what's consistent within most, if not all, these groups is that we see ourselves as victims. We have been wronged somehow. Somebody else is taking from us. Because somebody has something now we don't. We all seem to be loving seeing ourselves as victims. But the irony is, victims don't like to be victims. Victims don't walk around telling everybody that they're victims and rubbing it in their faces. So I have to question our identity as victims, our label as victims, and why we use it. I see that many of us like this label because it allows us to prioritize us. If nobody else is looking out for us, we have to look out for us. And it's a way to rationalize being self-centered. It's a way to rationalize not caring for others. It's a way to suppress our humanity, to step on others in order for us to get what we truly deserve. I have a different framing. My thinking is, if we all looked out for them instead of us, if we all looked out for them, then we would live in a world where everybody looks out for each other, where we don't have to look out for ourselves. None of us would be a victim. None of us would have to worry about being the victim, real or imagined. To illustrate this world, I want to share a few short stories that I've either been a part of or have been shared with me that kind of, either through a failing or through a success, kind of illustrate this better world. So the first one is about a bully I was with in middle school, high school, and one day I found out he had passed away. He killed himself. It was a suicide. And the sad part was my reaction. The worst part of this was my reaction, because my thought was, good, one less a-hole in the world. That was until I learned what happened. Why did he take his life? Turns out he had crashed his father's truck, came home, and because he'd been abused, he knew what was coming next, and he didn't want to face that. And so rather than facing the abuse of a parent, he just chose to take his life. And I realized my own callousness. I realized that I was so concerned with how he made me feel that I didn't bother to think about how he was feeling. Why was he angry? Why was he a bully? why would he treat people like shit? And after that, I really spent more time having empathy for angry people, having empathy for bullies, for all sorts of people that hurt other people, because we have to understand why. Why are they doing that? What pain did they feel? What pain are they experiencing? And as they say, hurt people hurt people. And so that was a really important understanding, a failing that I had, that helped me understand that it's really important. Even though somebody's making me feel a certain way, I have to get over myself. I have to stop seeing myself as a victim, and I have to look at them and understand, okay, what's hurting you? What are your problems? What can I help you with? So that's the first story. So this second story was shared with me by my cousin. He was distributing zakat. So zakat is 2.5% of a Muslim's savings wealth should be donated every year to help people who are in need. And so he was doing this in the Circassian community in the Golan Heights of Syria. And they had both meat and they had money. And so they were asking people, okay, what do you need? What would you like? And the people there, some would ask for one or the other. And this boy comes up to my cousin. And so my cousin asks, like, what would you like? And he's like, please give me meat. If you give money, my parents are going to take that money and they're not going to buy any meat. And I've never tasted meat. I don't know what it tastes like. I really want to taste it. And so my cousin was really shocked. He was really shocked. Like, Circassians and many people, they're proud. Many people are too proud to ask for help, even though they really need it. And so often real victims, you don't know they're victims. And it's very important to look beyond the surface and to really get to know people, see their lives, see how can you help them, how can you make their lives better, because some people just will not ask for help. So that was kind of like a second story that kind of really touched me and helped me understand, like, who's really a victim, who isn't a victim, what does it look like. The first scenario, a bully. Would you consider a bully a victim? Not really. Most people wouldn't. How about, somebody who doesn't, I don't need anything, don't, never asks, never begs, but they're in need of help. There are people who are silent, who are quiet, who are suffering. And in this society, it won't be often that we see people like that, but there are people who suffer psychologically in this society. We have to be close enough to them to discover these things, so that they will open up to us about these sensitive things. And it's really important. It's really important. So that's the kind of like the second story that really helped me understand, how can we create this better world. This third story, my father shared with me. So my father also grew up in the Golan Heights of Syria. And, as far as I can tell, nobody was particularly wealthy there. All right. You had some better off, some less so. But when my father was young, his father passed away. His father was killed in an accident. And so, growing up, didn't always have money. And so, they had a neighbor who, whenever they got a hold of some meat, they would invite my father and his family over to join them. And this is something he never forgot. Something to this day he shares with us about this this family that looked out for them. And it would be very easy for any family in this circumstance to look out for their own. Like, okay, we got meat, we're going to eat it. We'll eat it over a few days. We'll look out for ourselves. But the empathy that they had to know what it was like to not have, and then share it with others who are in a similar circumstance, it's really touching. It's really touching. And it's individual acts like that created a culture of generosity within the Muslim world, where people would share. There were special doors to restaurants where people anonymously could just open it, grab food, and leave. So even their pride, they didn't want to trample on people's pride, let them lower themselves to ask for help. That's the extent to which, this culture was nurtured within the Muslim world. You know, um, you know, endowments were set up to care for cats, to make sure the cats were fed within the cities. Birds were built into bird houses were built into the sides of mosques. So this this kind of story that my father shared, that I see within the Muslim world, just reminds me that we can live a better way. That this very harsh, dog eat dog, every person for themselves kind of world we find ourselves in today, it's not the only way. It's not the only way. We can create that better world. If poor people in the Golan Heights who, are barely eating meat can find a way to be generous with their neighbors, the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest societies in the world can find a way to help each other. So the person delivering the sermon that day was asking us to look beyond ourselves, asking us to look beyond our tribe. He was asking us to look out for each other, to break down these barriers that separate us. He was asking us to build that better world. So what can we do? The main thing we can do is shift our thinking. Instead of looking around us and seeing how people have wronged us, instead of looking around us and asking what others owe us, how about we look around the world and see how, or actually ask ourselves, how can I be a benefit? How can I make the situation better for others? That's a much more productive question to ask. That's a question that allows us to build that better world. That's a question that allows us to feel better about ourselves. In order to make this shift, we have to first be grateful. We live in a time of plenty. I know there's a lot going wrong. I know there's a lot of issues, but we truly live at a time and a place of plenty. Incredible health care, incredible medical breakthroughs, incredible wealth, so many incredible things. And that's not to say we don't have problems. Look, there are real problems in the society. There are real things that need to be changed to lift everybody up. But if we can recognize that there is enough to go around, that, somebody else's gain is not my loss. It's not a zero-sum game. That in itself, that gratitude we feel when we realize, like, okay, I have enough. That's the seed that we need to plant that will help us create this better world. Because in the end, it's not the lack of resources that's the problem. So the first thing, like I just mentioned, was be grateful. The second thing is to be generous. Now that we know there's plenty, that this society, our problem isn't that we don't have enough stuff here, enough wealth. How can we make other lives better? How can we make the lives of other people better? And go out into the world, hold the door open for somebody, say please, say thank you, something as little as that. Smile, just smile, make people happy, right? Create that culture of positivity and generosity. And if you see somebody in a begging outside of a fast food restaurant, buy them a meal, right? Just buy them a meal. It's simple, a few bucks. It's not going to dramatically affect you, but it's going to affect them. So those are little things we can do. Listen to our friends, have more intimate conversations, understand what problems they're going through, see if you can contribute to making their lives better. And the third thing we can do is to be observant. So be grateful, be generous, and then be observant. Why observant? Because we often get discouraged. When we're generous, we feel like it's quid pro quo. Okay, I gave something, now I want something back. And it doesn't work like that. We should give without expecting anything in return. But I guarantee you, when you give, it encourages that behavior in others. And with patience, with faith in our fellow human beings, we will see that come around eventually. But it takes people to sacrifice in the beginning, to And then to watch how people's behavior changes when we are kind to them, when we are generous with them, when and especially those people maybe we disagree with, maybe who aren't part of our group, you know, reach out to those and befriend those and be generous with those who aren't like us. That's how we undermine all this hate that's being built up. When politicians divide us and tell us who the enemy is, but then, you know, white people are helping black people are helping white people, liberals are helping conservatives, conservatives are helping liberals. You know what? That rhetoric, that hate speech falls on deaf ears because we know better, right? But we've fallen for it and we see each other's enemies. We need to break that. We need to break those. Break those perceptions, those biases, those prejudices that we've built up within ourselves. And observing the world around us will help us to see that reality changing, will help us to be encouraged to continue being grateful, to continue being generous. Look, does that mean bad things won't happen? Bad things will happen. Be patient, have faith. It will change. That's how we build a better world together. Not by looking out for us, but by looking out for them. And as I mentioned, I'm going to say it again because it's really necessary. It requires faith. It requires trust. It requires patience. But as I've seen in the stories that I shared, and even more stories that I didn't share with you, it is possible to create a society of love and respect and people lifting each other up rather than pulling each other down. I see it in people who come from the Muslim world, who take pride in not showing off, not showing their latest purchase or how much they spent on this or how much they spent on that, but in how generous they are and taking people out and paying for the meals and lifting people up instead of stepping on them. It is possible. It is so possible. I wish I could transfer my knowledge and my experiences to you, a data downlink or something, but it requires a change in our values and our mindset. That's the hard work we have to put in. Let's stop looking up and admiring people with ostentatious wealth, and let's start looking up at people with ostentatious kindness, ostentatious generosity. Imagine a world like that. I can. And I have hope for the society that one day we will see that. And I hope you do too. Please share your stories. Let me know what you think. And as always, wish you the best. Bye.